I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Don't ask, don't tell may soon be no more. We'll hear what a former military chaplain thinks about it.
Well, I hope the vote does not succeed in the Senate because I don't think it's a good thing.
The name may not be familiar, but this worldwide movement is here in Brooklyn doing the work of the church.
There's so many people who live in isolation, so many who are suffering, and that it's our responsibility to reach out to those.
And the Vatican's never-before-seen archives are released for all to see. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Francesca Maxime has the night off. A law that has divided the military may be close to a repeal, and that's angered some religious groups. The law is Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In a recent address to troops, Defense Secretary Robert Gates said that while it appeared likely that Congress would act, it likely would not be finalized for many months. The current policy bans openly gay, lesbian, and bisexual individuals from serving in the military, and it also prohibits the military from asking soldiers about their sexual orientation. And what does the church have to say about this news? We went to a church man with military experience to get that answer, Father Gerald Murray. He's a former Naval Reserve chaplain, and he's also the pastor of St. Vincent de Paul Parish in Manhattan's Chelsea neighborhood. Well, Father, thanks so much for being here today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
This is, of course, a very important issue today that we're talking about, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The legislative process already underway for this. It passed the House last week as part of the Defense Authorization Bill. It's passed in the Senate committee, but the full Senate still has to vote on it before it makes its way to the President's desk. What, first of all, is your view on the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the effect that that would have on the armed services?
Well, I hope the vote does not succeed in the Senate because I don't think it's a good thing. I think the current policy is good, it's useful, contributes to military readiness and good order and discipline, and it preserves the military from this experiment in social engineering, which is designed to promote the gay agenda, and I don't think it's going to be helpful to the military if it is passed, so I hope it's not.
Now, what's your main qualm with this? Is it the timing of it because the military is, of course, in two wars now, or is it the overall thing of letting gays serve openly in the military? Is that just a big problem in your view? What problem specifically would that cause?
Sure. Well, the way I look at it is people have a problem with same-sex attraction or homosexual attraction, have to deal with it, and it can be a liability in the specialized environment that is the military. If the gay culture gets an imprimatur or an approval from the Defense Department, the United States government, and that becomes now part of the military culture, because there are a lot of problems with the gay culture, and it certainly is going to cause a lot of problems for military service members who are opposed to homosexual activity. Now this is becoming viewed as normal by the Defense Department and the United States government. That's the problem.
Now, couldn't the same be said then, if that's the case, couldn't the same be said, say, for women and men serving together in the military? There might be a possibility for sexual attraction there. Couldn't the same thing be said with dealing with that sexual attraction on that level as well?
It's a different issue because having men and women serving together in the military, that's been something we've known for many years. Separate birthing, separate housing arrangements, fraternization rules have to be very strict and are, but unfortunately to equate normal attraction in men and women with homosexual attraction kind of confuses the issue. The problem here is if you have men who are active homosexuals who are now going to be allowed to function openly in the military, it's going to cause all kinds of problems for unit cohesion, and it's going to introduce an unwanted and unnecessary distraction for the war fighters.
Now, as far as chaplaincy and your experience, of course, as we've talked about, what effect would it have on chaplains in their ability to do their job, do you think?
Well, that's a big question, too, because, for instance, the Catholic Church and most Protestant churches preach that acts of sodomy are mortal sins. If you preach that, are you now going to be accused of a hate crime or of fostering an atmosphere that goes against command morale? I could very well see where a minister would give a sermon and then a homosexual service member gets up and says, that violates my right to equal treatment here. You have no right to say that. And what is the commander of the unit supposed to do? Tell the chaplain, to stop preaching or not? That's where that could cause a lot of problems.
And I mean, the overall, I guess the writing theme here, at least as far as I know, I mean, of course there are gays and lesbians serving in the military right now, and have been for years. I guess as far back as the military has been in existence, there have been gays and lesbians serving in the military. They just have not been able to be open about it. And the Clinton administration tried to make that a possibility back in the 90s, as you know, and that's when the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was implemented. So is it a better policy to just have those gay and lesbian service members stay in the closet, but possibly be discharged for the fact that they're gay or lesbian, than to serve openly, and as the president said the other day, I believe in a speech that he gave, openly have them serve openly and honestly, and not lie about who they are in the military?
Well, this comes to the question: what is homosexuality?
Right, it gets to the core of it.
No, is it a essential identity of a person, or is it a problem? And the Catholic Church says that it is an objective disorder in the psychosomatic makeup of someone. Being attracted to having sexual relations with the person of the same sex is not natural, and therefore to build an identity on that is to really confuse people. Now, in our culture, of course, gay liberation has been much advanced. But the church resists it and says, you're not helping people with a homosexual problem by telling them, embrace your identity. There is no identity. What you have to tell them is embrace the natural law, embrace God's mercy, and have, get counseling and support to try and live a chaste life. For some people, that will result in them no longer having same-sex attraction. Others, it won't. But in the meantime, both are trying to do God's will.
All right. Well, Father, thank you so much for coming in today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, Father Gerald Murray there on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Of course, that is a story we will continue to follow. But stay tuned. There's much more currents coming up straight ahead. When we return, we'll have the day's headlines, including the season of graduation ceremonies and arguments over prayer and religion. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, it's a part of the church you've never seen before. The Vatican offers an inside look at its secret archives. But first, let's check today's headlines. Well, Pope Benedict expressed regret and sorrow today over an Israeli raid on a flotilla of aid ships headed for the Gaza Strip. Israeli troops rappelled down onto the ships and met with resistance from pro-Palestinian activists. At least 9 people were killed after hours of fighting there. At his general audience today, Pope Benedict said his condolences go to the victims and said violence does not resolve conflict but only increases its tragic consequences and generates more violence. The Christian humanitarian groups quickly condemned the attack as well. The leader of the Catholic group Caritas International said actions by Israeli troops cut a lifeline of hope and solidarity with all Gazans, including Caritas workers stranded there. Well, back in this country, a Connecticut judge ruled this week that a school system cannot hold high school graduation ceremonies in a church. In her ruling, U.S. District Judge Janet C. Hall said allowing Enfield schools to hold high school commencement services in a church would be an unconstitutional government endorsement of religion. Now, a lawyer for the school district says he will appeal. Meanwhile, on the nation's other coast, a school board in Central California voted Tuesday night to do away with the invocation at a local high school graduation. The decision by members of the Exeter Union High School District is not sitting well with everyone, as we hear now from DeShonta Bullock.
Students and parents at Exeter High are excited about Friday's graduation.
They're going to go off to college, and this is a milestone in their life.
This milestone has been clouded by controversy on whether or not to allow a student-led prayer during commencement.
They've had prayers at graduations as far back as I can remember, so I feel it's very important.
We're told issues arose after concerned students contacted the Freedom from Religion Foundation and Americans United for Separation of Church and State, who say prayer during a graduation violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment.
The Supreme Court's been pretty clear about that. Public schools cannot sponsor prayer or religious worship, even at graduation.
ABC 30 legal analyst Tony Capozzi says that's the law.
And by forcing students to attend a graduation ceremony with religious overtones or a prayer, would be violating the Constitution.
Action News talked with several people in the community who believe it should be allowed.
I think there should be just as many rights for Christians as there are for non-Christians.
Opposing groups also say the student vote held last week is illegal.
I support the kids, because they were brought up this way, and that's what they want, and we need to support it.
When it comes to the Constitution, majority doesn't rule. The Constitution rules.
That report from DeShonta Bullock. Well, closer to home now, a 13-year-old Schenectady boy who was suspended from school for wearing rosary beads can return to class. A federal judge ruled Tuesday that Raymond Hosier could wear his rosary when he goes back to school, pending a hearing into whether the suspension violated his civil rights. School officials say they suspended Hosier because rosary beads are sometimes worn as gang symbols, but the 7th grader and his family say he wears the beads in memory of his younger brother who died in a bicycle accident. And finally, as the Italian government fights to overturn a case barring crucifixes from being displayed in classrooms, 10 other European countries say they support Italy's effort. The European Court of Human Rights ruled last year that the display of a crucifix in a classroom is contrary to parents' rights to educate their children in line with their convictions. Italy, along with the 10 other European states, has filed a petition with the court to overturn that decision. Stay tuned, there's much more Currents coming up. Just ahead, what is the community of St. Egidio? We'll tell you.
With our gatherings, we also see it as a moment for friendship, a moment to reach out to those who are in need, to speak to each other.
Welcome back. Well, not long ago, we spent a week getting to know a few of the many ecclesial movements in the diocese. There were really too many groups to just tackle in only one week, and so from time to time we'll be visiting some of the others to find out exactly what they're all about and how they enrich the life of the church here in Brooklyn. Well, tonight our Natalia Ortiz is here to introduce us to another ecclesial movement. It's one that's spread the word around the world, and it's also taken root right here in New York. Natalia?
Thank you, Matt. The Diocese of Brooklyn is home to about 15 ecclesial movements. You could say there's something for every Catholic. And every Catholic, regardless of their stage in life, has something to contribute to the mission of St. Egidio. Brendan Maloney, the local community person, came to share his experiences. Brendan, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's great to be here.
Give me a brief description of St. Egidio, the community of St. Egidio, and what this ecclesial movement, what the purpose is of it.
St. Egidio is a worldwide community that's based in cities throughout the world. But here in New York, we are here to gather together for prayer. We're here to reach out to those who live in isolation, the elderly, children, prisoners, and through that, build a friendship with those in isolation, really seeing what we do, our service, as a friendship.
What distinguishes the community of St. Egidio from other ecclesial movements? We've had several now here on the show, and I have to be honest with you, a lot of you overlap in your mission. Give me a sense of why someone would be interested in your community in particular.
Sure. Well, first let me say how wonderful it is that our missions overlap.
Great, yes.
That we're living the Gospels in many different ways. What makes St. Egidio unique is perhaps how we gather. That we see gathering in a church space as our center, as we do here in Brooklyn at St. Augustine's Church every Thursday evening. And the church becomes that space to gather for prayer, not on Sundays, but during the week. And with our gatherings, we also see it as a moment for friendship, a moment to reach out to those who are in need, to speak to each other. And the prayer of the community becomes that center point for us.
And briefly give me an idea of how this all started. I know that it started in the late 60s.
Sure.
A lot of these ecclesial movements did.
Yeah.
And it started in Rome, if I'm not mistaken.
It started in Rome by a group of high school students, of all things. And when these high school students were looking at the world around them, there was a lot of turmoil going on. And with this kind of worldwide peace movement, these students decided not to pick up protest signs, but they decided to pick up their Gospels. They decided to pick up the Word of God, and they decided to gather together in prayer every morning before school. And after reading this Word, they said to themselves, it's not enough just to read the Word, but we need to live the Word. We need to take this Gospel seriously. So they began to serve children within Rome, teaching them, and really forming a friendship with them, a bond that has really grown over the last 40 years of the community throughout the world.
Approximately how large is the group here in the Diocese of Brooklyn and Queens?
Here in the diocese, we're about 50.
Okay.
You know, so we're very small. We're a little seed that's growing. We are actually not based here in Brooklyn. We're based in this and throughout the city. We do a lot of our ministry in Manhattan. We do a lot of our prayer here in Brooklyn has been a wonderful gift because it's really opened us up to so many immigrant communities, which has been wonderful.
And is there an age requirement or a limitation for people who would like to join?
There are no age requirements. The oldest member of the community of Sant'Egidio here in New York is about 90 years old.
Wow.
The youngest member of the community of Sant'Egidio is of 12. So to understand, we run the gamut of ages. We also run the gamut of diversity. We have some friends who are here who actually knew the community of Sant'Egidio in Congo. And then they moved to the United States, where, again, they found this community of Sant'Egidio. To give you an idea of one story of how one group came here.
Well, what's your story? Why do you do this?
Well, I do this first and foremost because of the ability to take the gospel seriously with friends, to be able to sit in prayer at the end of the day, knowing, you know, I have a full-time job just like anybody else. But that being said, it's still important for me to really gather in front of God with some friends and really say, all right, God, I did as much as I could today. And to listen to the Gospels, but also to not make my work just my life. That within Sant'Egidio we recognize there's so many people who live in isolation, so many who are suffering, and that it's our responsibility to reach out to those. So what we do is we reach out to the elderly. We hold a prayer with them on Wednesday evenings. We do different letter writing to prisoners on death row. We support our communities throughout the world, whether it be in Africa, where we have this amazing program called the DREAM program, helping children who have HIV or AIDS, and really trying to prevent mother-to-child transmission.
Right. Well, how can someone here in the Diocese of Brooklyn join, or where can they find out more information about it?
Sure. Well, as I said before, here in Brooklyn, we're based at St. Augustine's Church, where we have our prayer on Thursday evenings, and anyone's welcome to attend at 6:30. And additionally, you can email me if you'd like to at Sant'Egidio USA.
Okay.
SANTEGIO.
We'll put it on the blog, and that way people won't have to rush to their computers or their pencil and paper and write it down. Thank you so much for being with us today, Brendan. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
To find out more about the community of Sant'Egidio here in Brooklyn and Queens, go to currentsny.net and click on Riding the Wave.
So many ecclesial movements.
Yes, I know.
We keep finding out more and more about all of them.
I know.
And, you know, this is a series I'm glad that we're doing because, you know, I don't think otherwise a lot of people would even know that they exist.
That's what I told him. Yeah. I said, you know, I work here and I'm still learning so much about all these ecclesial movements, and I find it fascinating.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
And they said, when you were talking to him, because this is something that we've discussed before too, about how the missions do kind of overlap.
Yes.
And you brought that up in your discussion with him, and I think it's very interesting. And he was like, thankfully they do, because it's like, what's the issue? Because they're covering kind of the same ground. Yeah.
Absolutely. I find it that was a great answer, an unexpected answer as well. And I wasn't meaning to grill him, but it was an authentic question. You know, well, what's the difference? And there are some differences, but there's also a lot that brings them together.
Right.
You know, so that's good.
Maybe slightly different niches for each and every one of them, but overall, I guess the same kind of, you know, overall mission. They all are part of the church, and you know, they're all groups of believers. So there you go. Very good. Thank you very much, Natalia. We appreciate it. Well, stay with us. There's much more Currents still to come. When we return, from the Pope's fingertips to yours, it's a revealing look inside the Vatican's secret archives. Well, finally tonight, one of the most guarded and secretive corners of the world is finally being revealed, and we're about to give you a first look. It's the Vatican's top secret archives, a treasure trove of documents, letters, contracts, and even ballots used to elect the Pope. Well, now some of that is being disclosed for the very first time in a new book. And it's one that gives the public a rare glimpse inside the vaults of the Vatican.
Through this hardback book, the Vatican Secret Archives is revealing some of the secrets it's kept locked away for centuries. The book offers 105 documents that until now were only made available to scholars with special approval. The writings are accompanied by text and photos of the Vatican Archives building. The collection includes documents such as a draft letter Pope Pius XI wrote to Hitler in 1934, in which he speaks of the Church's pursuit of true peace. The high-quality reproduction shows pencil marks believed to have been made by the future Pius XII. Then, on page 46, readers can find a papal document condemning and excommunicating Martin Luther. The diverse collection also includes correspondence with some of the world's most celebrated artists like Bernini. The architect of St. Peter's Basilica wrote to the Pope requesting payment for his work at St. Mary Major's Basilica and the famous Bernini's angels that lined the bridge at Castle St. Angelo. In all, Bernini was requesting more than 8,000 scudi. In the year 1550, Michelangelo also wrote a letter requesting payment and saying a long conclave was stalling his work on the basilica's dome. That conclave was the one that elected Pius VI. It took more than 3 months, and the official ballot is also part of this collection. A collection that gives readers around the world a taste of what lies inside the walls of the Vatican.
A fascinating look at history there, and who knows what other treasures still waiting to be uncovered in those archives. Indiana Jones, I think, will be pretty impressed. Well, that's it for tonight. Now, coming up tomorrow, a local group does something out of the ordinary to pray for immigration reform. They undertake a fast, and we'll show you what's behind that and who is doing it. But remember, in the meantime, you can always catch us online. We're over at currentsny.net on the World Wide Web. Check out our Facebook page as well. We're always updating you several times a day, so check us out there. Until next time, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Have a great one.